everyone! So I'm starting my first baking vlog! Yay! So thought I'd give a little bit of an intro and a background, and then also going to do my first recipe today and hit the ground running. So why did I start to do a baking vlog? First, I'm one of those people that's a better baker than a cook. I can't cook very well. I've acknowledged this about myself. Boyfriend cooks. I don't. So I went to India last summer, and on the way there we stopped through Charles de Gaulle Airport, which would be in Paris, both to and from. And on the way back I tried macaroons from Laduree, or I'm sure it's more French sounding than that. Or if I said it like where I'm from Georgia, Laduree. The macaroon shop, and they've been around a very long time, just known for their macaroons. There's only one store in the United States, and it's in New York, and I just loved it so much. So my favorite flavor was raspberry macaroons. I thought, well, can I make those myself? Probably not, but I did find that they had a cookbook online. This lovely cookbook right here. So I asked for it from my mom for graduation from grad school, and I got it. And as you can see, actually, this is the box that comes in. Very fancy. Comes in this nice tissue paper. And the book was actually on back order when I saw that I wanted it. So luckily I told my mom in enough time. But I looked on Amazon yesterday and they actually have the book in stock, and it's got this nice gold edge and pretty pictures on the inside. So I am no expert baker. I usually do from the box cakes and then try and spice it up or decorate it nice and pretty. But I decided I'm going to become a real baker now and try something different. I have my KitchenAid mixer and I'm ready to go. I decided for my first recipe I'm going to do meringues, which is super easy. There's only 3 ingredients. It's sugar, egg whites, and confectioner's sugar, and that's all that you need. It is on page 338 of the cookbook. And so I'll say I cheated a little bit. I did this recipe yesterday and actually turned out really well. As I go through this cookbook, and that's what I'm intending to do with this blog, try different things, start off easy and get a little more difficult. I'll share with you how it went. I'm sure not all of them are going to be good. Some of them are very complicated recipes, but this was an easy one. I made raspberry ones yesterday. So the recipe is actually an unflavored, but I added red food coloring and just raspberry extract and made these cute little meringues yesterday, and they turned out really well. So as I go through the recipe today, I will tell you how it went yesterday, because there were a few little hiccups along the way, even though the recipe is very easy. So again, going to start with meringues and then work my way through. My ultimate goal is to make this chocolate cake on page 184. That is going to be my penultimate achievement if I'm able to make this chocolate cake, because it includes chocolate macaroon, dark chocolate sponge cake, cocoa syrup, dark chocolate ganache, chocolate mousse, dark chocolate glaze, all in one cake to make one cake. The prep time is 4 hours. And when a cookbook says a time, I usually double it in my mind because I'm very meticulous and I know I'm going to screw something up, and nothing is as quick as it seems. You know, Rachel Ray, she makes things in 30 minutes. It takes normal people an hour and a half to make her 30-minute meals. Not everything already comes in a little bowl pre-prepared for you. So this may seem a little bit like Julie and Julia, that book where she followed her recipes, but this is going to taste better and hopefully not be as difficult. We're not going to have anything with duck guts and gross things in it. Hopefully everything will be good. So I'm excited to start my vlog and to share this with you. Again, not an expert, not claiming to be an expert. Just want to share my adventures with you, and maybe you'll want to try some recipes too. Hopefully this book, if everything tastes as good as the meringues did from yesterday, will be in good shape. Now, to start off, I do have a very small kitchen. I'm in an old house that also doesn't have air conditioning. So when things are sensitive to humidity, it makes it a tad difficult. I don't have a lot of equipment right now. I don't even have a microwave. All of that is on order. I have an immersion blender coming from KitchenAid and a bunch of fun KitchenAid gadgets on their way that should be delivered at some point, and then I'll make the macaroons, because you do need an immersion blender for a macaroon, food processor as well. So I'll be making more difficult recipes as I have the tools to make them. Right now, I'm just kind of stuck with a mixer, which does make a number of the recipes in this book, but especially makes meringues. So I'm excited to start, and let's get going. Okay, so First I put my hair up because no one wants hair in their meringues. I put an apron on because I am very clumsy. And even though this seems like an easy recipe, I did need it yesterday when I kind of spilled the uncooked meringue all over my toaster. So the first step is to preheat the oven to 210, which is low. Essentially this is just going to dry out the meringues. It's not really cooking them, just drying them out in a slow process. The next thing we're going to do is to sift 1 cup of confectioner sugar. After you're done sifting that, you're going to set that aside because we're not going to need that until we're ready to put this in the oven. The next step is going to be taking our 4 egg whites, which I already did, and definitely put these in a small bowl first because if you're like me and not very good at cracking eggs, if you do it right into your mixing bowl, you could ruin the other eggs that you've cracked. So do that separately from putting it directly in the bowl. So the next thing we're going to do is put the egg whites into our mixing bowl, which should be clean and dry. This is no other ingredients in there right now. And I'm using the whisk attachment on my KitchenAid mixer. Lock it on the side, and then we're going to whisk it until we see it nice and frothy, which should only take a few minutes. As you can see, my egg whites are now foamy, and this only took about maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. The next thing we're going to do is add 3 tablespoons of sugar. The tablespoon I like to use is like this, where it's adjustable. This is really nice if you're doing dry ingredients because they'll fall right out. If you're doing wet ingredients, a lot of people don't like this because you have to clean it between each one. So then I'm just going to add my 3 tablespoons. And I'm going to whip it until it is firm. Okay, now that I've whipped that a couple minutes, I'll lift this up to see it's kind of firm now. And this is where I altered the recipe yesterday, and where I'll alter it today, is to add in food coloring and flavoring, because it is going to be whipped 2 more times after this with more sugar, so then it will already be mixed in there. Now, yesterday I did a few drops of red food coloring to make pink meringues, because typically meringues are a pale color even if they are colored. Today I'm going to do a little bit of yellow, so it's just a pale yellow, and I could still add more later while it's still whipping. To add flavoring, I just do a little splash. I'm doing almond today. Almond and coconut and vanilla, I believe, are the typical meringue flavors. Yesterday I did raspberry, so I wanted to try something fruity, so I'm just going to do a little bit of a splash, and that will flavor everything plenty. So now we're going to add another 3 tablespoons of sugar, and we're going to whip it for 1 minute. And this I do like to time because the recipe says 1 minute between each of the others, so I am going to time this to specifically 1 minute. And you can already see the difference between the last time and this time. See, it's getting much thicker than the last time I stopped. And the last step is to add the last 3 tablespoons of sugar, and this time we want to whip it until it is nice firm peaks. So when I lift that whisk up, I could see little peaks that hold stable. As you can see, that's still pretty runny. The peak should hold, so I'm going to keep that going for a little bit longer. Now I've stopped it. Had it go for probably another minute actually, and I'm wondering if it's not from the extract, because this is a liquid extract. I think I put a little bit more in than I did of the raspberry yesterday, so this could be making it a little more liquefied. I added a tiny bit more sugar, hoping it would help it stiffen up. And as you can see how it's got those peaks, trying to connect between the two, that means now we're at the right consistency. Now I actually don't have a spatula, but the next thing we're going to do is to fold in the confectioner's sugar. As you can see, all sifted out. Remember what we did at the beginning of the recipe, but I'm going to do it with just this little wooden mechanism. It'll act well enough as a spatula. The thing is to make sure you fold it and don't mix it, because you don't want to break apart that meringue. I'll tell you, I was at first a little afraid to make a meringue, because I remember, I think it was sophomore year in undergrad, I was trying to make something like a key lime pie for my boyfriend at the time, and I over whipped the meringue, and it was not good. It was just too stiff, and it was nasty, and so I was a little afraid to make this, thinking, don't let however many years apart repeat twice. 6 years, 5 years. So now we're going to line some pans with parchment paper. One thing I learned yesterday is that this parchment paper is a little bit wider than my pan, and it stayed up on the edges, and because this meringue isn't very heavy, unlike a cookie dough, it didn't weigh it down in the corners. So today I'm going to make sure that I trim it up a little bit so it better fits into my pan. And the most difficult thing I found out about yesterday was actually using the piping bag. That did not go very well. If you look at my toaster, I still have a little bit of pink meringue, which I need to clean off from yesterday. I have a piping bag and tips, but if you don't have the piping bag and tips, you can just cut off the corner of a Ziploc bag and use that instead. You could still get a nice swirling effect. So yesterday the tip I used was the Wilton 32 tip. However, I wasn't really happy with this tip. If you look in the cookbook, you can see it has some really defined edges on the meringue. However, this I found only gave it a little bit. If you look at this one from yesterday, it's a nice swirl and it's still cute, but it doesn't have any of those defined edges. It more looks like the icing on the top of a cupcake. So today I'm going to use a different tip. I'm going to be using the Wilton 2D tip, which is more of a star shape, and I'm hoping that'll give me some more defined edges when I squeeze it. Okay, now that I've got my piping bag and the tip ready, some of the bags and some of the tips and the tip I used yesterday, you use this kind of plastic thing to hold it in, but that's not really necessary, and this one is too wide for that holder in it. Now this is where I botched yesterday. I filled the piping bag up way too much, so then I started squeezing out the top and there was meringue everywhere. I actually went through 2 piping bags. So I watched a YouTube video last night on how to better do a piping bag, and I think I was just filling it up way too much. You should really only fold down 2/3 and really only fill up 1/3 of the bag so you have that control and it doesn't start popping back out the top. Another cool trick that I saw was if you have something that's too liquid, this is actually pretty solid so it won't start dripping out the bottom, but if you were doing something like a ganache, you twist it right here and then shove this into the tip while you're filling it, so whatever you're filling it with doesn't come out the tip while you're filling it. I thought that was a neat trick. So my meringue is still pretty stiff, as you can see, and it's a nice pale yellow, which I think it's gonna look good. I'm gonna fill up my bag. So now I'm going to squeeze this on the pan into these little circles. Need to make sure I leave enough room between each because they will spread. That is per the recipe warns of that. I don't think it spreads too much though, so not too much space is needed. Certainly doesn't spread as much as, say, cookies would if you were doing them in circles. And if you live someplace really humid, which I just moved here to Michigan, however, it is very humid here as well, it may be more difficult for your meringue to firm. Just be aware of that. So I finished 1 pan of meringues. As you can see, I still have quite a bit left, so I'm going to try and fit it into this small pan over here, and perhaps even a second small pan. I think I wasted a lot yesterday on the outside of my piping bag. The recipe also says that if you don't have a piping bag, you can do a 3-sided oval using 2 hot spoons. I'm not sure what a 3-sided oval looks like. So as you can see, I've made quite a few meringues out of this one recipe. The recipe says it makes 20, but I've got a lot more than 20, so I'm guessing they make theirs a little bit larger. So now I'm going to put it in the oven for 2.5 hours. But I'm going to come back and check it in about an hour just to see how things are going. So now just preoccupy yourself.
Where you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe.
Previously on The Real Housewives of Orange County. Hi. Michael went to...
Ugh, you win again. We don't have to be so snooty about it and keep shaking your head. Come on. So we're at about an hour and some right now. So you can see the meringues look about the same as when I put them in there. With clean hands, you can touch them. They're not too hot because the oven's not too hot. And you can see it's not still so soft. I can pick them up with the parchment paper. You can hear that tapping. They're getting a little harder on the bottom, but I can still tell they're quite soft. At this point, I got a little afraid with the raspberry ones because they smelled a lot like cough syrup, and I was afraid that extract wasn't going to be a good flavor, but it turned out okay. So now we're going to wait about another hour, and then I'm going to check on it again to see where we are. Huh, Revenge of the Nerdiest Nerds. Must go to Georgia Tech. Hello, Mr. Pepper Shaker. Hello, Mr. Salt Shaker. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Tweet. So I came back at just over 2 hours. Not quite the 2.5, and I'm noticing that I think the meringues are done. I think they're a little bit smaller than the ones I made yesterday. As you can see, you can pick them up, and they're hard on the outside as well as dried out on the bottom. So now a tip that I saw yesterday that I didn't do was that just to turn the oven off and let them cool in the oven. It'll help the center crisp. I got a little anxious yesterday and tried them pretty soon out of the oven, and I noticed that the raspberry batch that I made was soft in the center, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's common that homemade meringues will be chewy in the center and then just crispy on the outside. However, after letting them dry for a little bit in the Tupperware, I noticed that they were also crispy in the center. So that's what I'm shooting for today, is crispy on the outside and crispy in the center. Since they seem like they're done, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the oven and then let them cool in there for probably 15 minutes, and then I'll move on to the next step. And the final step is to coat them with powdered sugar, the confectioner's sugar. Yesterday I just tried to sprinkle it on there, but it stayed way too clumped, so I found sifting it worked a lot better. So now I'm going to put them in the container. To get these off, I'm just going to tap the back, because you don't want too much powdered sugar on there. It's just to get rid of the shine a little bit. And I only did 2 pans because I'm going to use the excess powdered sugar that I'm getting off and recycle it back into the sifter and do the other pan. So I'm trying these almond ones for the first time. As you can see, they're crunchy in the center, and they actually taste a lot like biscotti. So if you like biscotti, I think almond is a really good flavor to try. But really, you can try any flavor that comes in an extract, whichever one is your favorite. So now I have finished raspberry and almond meringues. I really like this recipe because it's nice and easy, and it's different from cookies. If you want to give it to someone because they're not soft and they don't stick together, they're easy to put in a bag to give to someone, and super simple to make. Plus they're really lightweight, so even though not made from the best ingredients, just sugar and egg whites, super simple and easy to eat a lot of them quickly. Now I don't intend to do every recipe from the book step by step like this. That would take a lot, especially when I finally get to that chocolate layer cake. But I figured this was a good first recipe to try and share with everyone. So I hope you will continue following my bakery blog and adventures. I intend to do at least one more this upcoming week with the 4th of July holiday, and I already have one in mind that will be nice and patriotically themed. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll join me next time.